promotion. So, welcome to the L Nutra Longevity Lab series, where science meets strategy for a longer, healthier life. I'm Renee, your host, longevity dietitian, and director of education at L Nutra. Every episode, we explore the latest research, expert insights, and practical tools to help you harness the power of fasting, nutrition, and longevity science. Whether you're new to wellness or you're looking to expand your expertise, we're here to empower you with the knowledge that supports vibrant and lasting health. Today, as I mentioned, we have not one, but two incredible experts. We have Dr. Beverly Yates, who is a naturopathic doctor, an internationally acclaimed diabetes expert, and author of her upcoming book, The Yates Protocol. Her book is exploring her protocol, a natural and evidence-based approach to helping individuals regain control over their blood sugar, boost energy, and improve overall health. With over 20 years of clinical experience and a background as an MIT-trained electrical engineer, Dr. Yates developed her approach by combining her expertise in systems thinking and a deep understanding of the lifestyle factors impacting blood sugar control, helping thousands of people worldwide manage type 2 diabetes without shaming or blame. We also have Ashley Bizzell, who is a registered dietitian and certified diabetes care education specialist with over 15 years of experience in clinical nutrition and chronic disease management. We are very lucky to have her here at L Nutra as the Director of Clinical Nutrition and Global Training at L Nutra Health. And she leads evidence-based nutrition coaching, develops clinical programs, and drives global training initiatives focusing on advancing type 2 diabetes remission through innovative nutritional interventions and lifestyle medicine. So thank you both for joining us.
Thank you, Renee. That was a mouthful.
I know. I felt like I was just going on. But you guys have so much experience and so much expertise. It would have been a shame not to share it all. But you guys are really going to show us what it's all about now.
Yeah, definitely. I'm excited about this today. So thank you. So Ashley, take us away. Go ahead.
Sure. Do you want me to just talk a little bit about my background in nutrition, Renee? And
Please, I would love that.
Why
If you would
not?
just like to share that background, your personal experience, maybe what influenced you to focus in the space of metabolic health, and maybe what your background did to shape you today, that would be a beautiful way to start. Ashley, feel free to take it away.
Sure. Absolutely. At a young age, I knew I was interested in healthcare, and I had a fantastic physician as a teenager who studied nutrition. And I looked up to her, and I thought, gosh, nutrition is something that you can carry with you for life. No matter what realm of medicine I chose to go into. So I knew immediately going into college, that's what I was going to study. I studied food science and human nutrition, and then went on to become a dietitian. Actually, my first job, I worked with the Medtronic 3-day blood glucose monitor before the CGMs were even around. It was like the initial stages, and patients would wear it. I would look at it. We'd download it together, look for things that they could work on with diet and exercise. And then took a little detour. I was in critical care nutrition for over a decade in the hospital setting. Also nutrition, but working more enteral nutrition and parenteral, and people that are sick, really, really sick. And 2020, I kind of got this itch for a change. I wanted to return back to those initial roots of preventative medicine and really helping people see change, celebrate those wins with them. So got back into telehealth and joined L Nutra, and love the science behind fasting and getting to incorporate that with my diabetes expertise and helping people see long-term changes. So that's just a little bit about my kind of where I came from and where I've gone throughout my nutrition career. So
Absolutely. And as I mentioned, we are very lucky to have you and all of your experience leading the charge in all things L Nutra Health. And Dr. Beverly Yates, who we also have such an incredible pleasure of working so closely with. Please share a little bit about yourself.
Yes, thank you so much. So hi, friends. I have a hybrid background. Started out my career after college as an electrical engineer working in Silicon Valley before everything got to be these mega corporations, right? The Valley was still an orchard. And then moved to the Northwest, and the Northwest did me in. It's a temperate rainforest, at least it used to be. And that mold up there, ooh, long story short, that's how I found naturopathic medicine. That's what got my health put back together, because it turns out me and black mold are not friends. So here I am 30 plus years clinical as a licensed doctor of naturopathic medicine, and had a chance to do an innovative thing, which was be the founder and medical director for the integrative and naturopathic medicine residency program that was fully certified and board accredited here in the state of California. So it's been an amazing career, book coming out, etc. But at the heart of all this is serving people who need help with chronic illness, specifically things in the metabolic realm, especially all things diabetes and blood sugar control. I'm really saddened to see how much of a train wreck this has become internationally. There's so many more people now struggling with their blood sugar than has ever been true before in human history. And I'm well aware if we don't turn this around, it's going to be more than 50% of humanity affected. Over one and two. We can't let that happen, guys. So we're all on the same team. So let's do this.
Absolutely. And we're right there with you, Dr. Yates. And maybe the perfect segue into looking into your recommendations, because I think that's where the solutions lie, right? So maybe Dr. Yates, let's start with you. Would you share maybe your primary recommendation or your general philosophy when it comes to metabolic health and what you would guide your patients to do?
Well, so for metabolic health, I just finished my day with telehealth calls. For metabolic health, my primary recommendation is that people really get dialed in on the 5 things that they can actually have some control over that make the biggest difference for metabolic success or metabolic problems, right? Nutrition is always going to be the bullseye of the target, and knowing specifically what your blood sugar is doing, not guessing at it. Test, don't guess, because sometimes we can have a healthy list of foods that generically are good for people for blood sugar control, but you might be having unusual reactions. What if your gut microbiome doesn't like something? What if it's a food sensitivity for you, right? So I think using CGMs and having data really guide you. Don't guess at that. You'd be surprised sometimes what's healthy or not healthy for someone can really be surprising. The other 4 things, and these are all part of the Yates protocol, is meal timing. The time of day you eat your food matters. This also includes polycystic ovarian syndrome, diabetes, all of those things in the metabolic realm. The next is sleep. Sleep is a beautiful opportunity each night to hit the reset button and get your blood sugar into a healthy range. And for some of us, sleep is where it all goes wrong. That's where blood sugar might be completely wacky, and here you are asleep and don't even know your blood sugar has run off with the game for you, right? Next one would be stress. Stress is no one's friend. Things tend to break if we are super stressed and don't have a chance to recover. I look at these various catastrophes around the world, and I keep thinking, oh my gosh, you know, wow, just the impact of what's happening with stress. And even good stressors can be troublesome, but bad stressors really can blow up your blood sugar. And then finally, it's going to be our friends exercise/strength training, with an emphasis in the case of how I work with people for metabolic health on strength training. Your active working muscles make the difference. You want to have an insulin sensitivity, and strength training helps to renew or refresh, to re-up, if you will, that insulin sensitivity, so that your body takes up your blood sugar, your glucose, puts it inside the cells for energy rather than shoveling it towards fat storage. That's often the game, especially as we age.
Absolutely. And I'm sure that Ashley is going to agree with you on pretty much every single one, if not all of those bullets. It's hard not to. And I love listening to your sound bites, Dr. Yates. Test, don't guess. I think that's going to stick with me. I'm just curious, before I jump over to Ashley's philosophy here, what do you think for those of us who might not be or may not be sure where we stand on the metabolic health spectrum? Do you still believe in using CGMs and testing and not guessing?
Yes, absolutely. That's a great question. Thank you for asking it. If you'd asked me that 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I would say no. What's the point? These days, because A, there's so many people walking around who are undiagnosed with prediabetes, type 2 diabetes, and sometimes type 1 or type 1.5, they're not diagnosed. The other reason I would say that is that I feel like today's world has so much more complexity. Without that objective data, we really don't know who's having blood sugar troubles, right? Similarly, if you had a fever and you had a thermometer, you could tell, oh, I really do have a fever, or no, I just feel warm, I'm actually okay. And so I think of a CGM as being every bit as important as a thermometer is for assessing a fever.
Absolutely. And I was just trying to remember. Yep, I was just trying to get that stat. More than 8 in 10 people with prediabetes do not know that they have it. It is an incredibly high statistic. So it is so important to do these tests and to get that checked. So Ashley, please, I know we have very similar philosophy. So please share a little bit more about what your recommendations would be.
Sure, yes. And Dr. Gates, I need to learn some good catchphrases like yours. I love those. The test, don't guess. I think because I would just build upon the lifestyle pillars that you mentioned and how important those are to metabolic health. But as far as nutrition specifically, with that being kind of my specialty, I think sustainability is so important. Finding something that you can do long term. And with that being said, really the Mediterranean diet or more of a longevity diet, I feel like is something that is so doable and easy and that you can do for life, that it's well balanced, well researched for metabolic health, for cardiometabolic risk factors, for diabetes. So more plant-based foods, just more high micronutrient content foods, anti-inflammatory foods, omega-3 fatty acids from fish and from nuts and avocados. So good healthy fats, less processed foods, so more grains, avoiding a lot of those middle of the aisle um, of the grocery store and sticking to those outside. So just whole food, plant-based as much as possible with good protein foods like fish, nuts, healthy fats is really kind of where I encourage all of my patients to go. And then individualization, which, the CGM offers you some of that, gives you some insight into what to do for members, but and give them guidance with their foods. But I think that's so important, working with a professional that can help you find what's right for you, whether what your protein needs are, maybe what your calorie needs are, but helping to find things that work best for your body because we're all unique. We're all a little different and it's not a one size fits all. So I think those two things are really key for kind of my nutrition philosophy.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And Dr. Yates, did you have anything to add there? Sorry.
No, I just wanted to echo on what Ashley's saying. I agree with it completely. We are individuals and we need to honor that. You can observe with people who are twins or triplets, quadruplets, and even as when they're children and they're in the same environment and they're drinking the same water, eating the same foods, and they still have these bio-individual responses, we really have to meet people where they're at and honor that and take some of the mystery out of this. I honestly think, at least here in the US, I feel like we make it too hard for people to be healthy and to understand what are the most important levers for their own health that they need to monitor so that they can age well, live independently as long as possible, and really thrive through all their stages of life.
Fantastic. I'm keeping my eye on the Q&A, and there's a couple things that I want to bring up here. And certainly the conversation around CGMs has sparked a handful of questions. And first, let me just say, for those who are not familiar with what the heck a CGM is, let's just first clarify. It's a continuous glucose monitor. Dr. Yates is sharing that on her screen now. And I don't know, Dr. Yates, do you want to just share a quick brief intro on what that is, who should be using it, and maybe we also got a question on, I'm not diagnosed as with type 2 diabetes or pre-diabetes that I know of. How do I get my hands on something like this?
Sure, sure. I'm happy to jump in here on this one. So a CGM stands for Continuous Glucose Monitor. It was originally developed in order to get type 1 diabetics insight into real-time data around what their blood sugar was doing, because for them it can be immediately life-threatening. Since then, the world of people who use these continuous glucose monitors, these CGM devices, has expanded. There's even over-the-counter now available here in the US. Other parts of the world, it's usually over-the-counter, but not the US. But finally, we caught on. And so in that, you can use it to see real time what your blood sugar is doing in response to the food you've eaten, into response to your lifestyle, your stress levels, your sleep, your exercise, things like that, meal timing, specific parameters. So this way, because these are lifestyle centric things, it gives you so much more power and control. You can see what really serves you, what keeps you in a nice healthy zone, which meals agree with you, and where's trouble.
A lot of people are asking, if they don't have type 2 diabetes, would their doctor prescribe this to them? And is there a way to get this type of thing prescribed, or is it all over the counter?
It's all over the counter if you're here in the US. That's my experience. When I just finished my telehealth calls, last one with a woman who's in the middle of the country, her doctor is a wonderful doc because he actually cares about her health and he's on board and he's prescribed it, even though she is not a type 2 diabetic. She has pre-diabetes. Ideally, doctors will prescribe this independent of diabetes status. That said, now that we have over-the-counter options, I'm hopeful that people will have easier access to this. Some doctors won't prescribe them unless you are a type 2 diabetic, often with an A1C in the higher ranges, like a 9 or higher. Now that's Medicare rules, but many of us are not in that bucket of people. We may not be old enough to be on Medicare, et cetera. So at least for the US, this is a more nuanced conversation. make sure you advocate for yourself. Let your doctor know you want data. You don't have to guess at it. Tell them test, don't guess. That ought to wake up the doctor in them. That's my thought.
Absolutely. Maybe we can send them all this recording.
I love that.
So what are I'm going to start with you, Ashley, actually on this one.
Yeah.
What are some of the most common misconceptions that you encounter around metabolic health, and how do you address these myths in your practice?
Think some of the myths that I see over and over again is that people associate outward appearance with a picture of their metabolic health. You think they look like they have diabetes. They look like they have this, and that's not the case at all. I mean, we see so many people that come to us that maybe are really thin, but they have insulin resistance, or there's it doesn't tell you the whole picture. And that's where the CGM is helpful to give us insight. Labs, looking at those is helpful to give us insight, and then kind of individualizing based on what you find. But yes, I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions. And then the old school calories in equals calories out for weight loss. And that's just not the case either. There's so many factors that Dr. Yates mentioned with sleep and stress, and that play such a big part of your weight journey. And so I think both of those are really huge ones that I see over and over again as far as misconceptions. What do you think, Dr. Yates? Do you see those same
Oh boy, you hit on a
things?
big one. I mean, there's a lot of drive-by doctors, drive-by nurses and drive-by therapists who think that they can actually look at someone and assess what their health is or isn't. Some people are just more oriented, whether it's Briggs Myers test, something else, to be judgmental. And it's not helpful because if judgment were a part of healing, no one would have diabetes, right? It is not that simple. You can't just look at someone and know their health. So just because someone is lean does not mean they're healthy. And if someone is overweight or obese, they might not be unhealthy. It's just an interesting time where we're just learning so much more about what really constitutes metabolic health. And in that, I've had a chance to talk a number of times with Dr. Sue, for instance, about metabolic health and the idea of thin on the outside, fat on the inside, where someone has a lot of abdominal fat, but it's not visible. It's hanging behind the muscular wall of the abdomen. And they might have fatty liver, but they themselves, they could actually be underweight. So you just never know. So
Mhm.
I always say when you are with your doctor or other health providers, make sure you're getting fully tested. One of the shocking things I found is a lot of people are not routinely tested for their fasting morning blood sugar number. They're not routinely tested for their A1C. Even when they're over the age of 40, they're still not routinely tested. This is why, as Renee shared earlier, we have more than 80% of people with prediabetes who don't know it. Duh, nobody tested. And it's not reasonable to ask the general public to figure that out.
Absolutely. And I'm curious, I mean, to me, this sparks the next obvious question, which is if is there anything that we should be looking for as alarm bells to say, oof, I should go get tested? Or is it just maybe a periodic every year? Or what would be a sign to say, let me go see what's going on here?
I think prediabetes and diabetes both, I mean, they're not things that a lot of times there's an outward sign for, and maybe not that sense of urgency. And so having routine checkups, routine lab work, even if it's just once a year or whatever your insurance covers, or if you just want to take charge and know and find out, is so important to get a little insight. I always say get those ABCs, your A1C, your blood pressure, cholesterol. I mean, that's not everything, but at least it gives you a little insight into metabolic health and where you need to focus. And there's a lot of great labs out there that give you even more information, but that's a good place to start. And doing so yearly is helpful. And then if you have family history, kind of knowing maybe some of the things that you might be more susceptible for. So just keeping yourself educated and being your own advocate is so important.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Anything to add there, Dr. Yates?
A shout out, Ashley, around this issue with family inheritance, family tendencies. And if you're a person who is adopted, please get your DNA checked to find out what your genetic heritage is around these more likely to be genetically expressed illnesses like diabetes or blood sugar dysregulation, right? In my case, as I got reconnected to my biological father, my parents divorced when I was about a year old. And as I connected to them, and thankfully they were warm, loving, accepting family. It doesn't always work because I was scared, but it worked out. He was one of 13 siblings. All 13 of them had some kind of diabetes. Had I not reached out and reestablished that connection, and God bless my mother for facilitating it, believe it or not, that's a whole nother story. Um, I would never have known. It made me far more vigilant. And so I make sure when I'm training, do the strength part. I mean, so anybody listening to this, if you know you have a family history, you need to be on your game, especially in today's world. We've got all kinds of strange things in the environment, the food, the water, the air. Whew, exercise, the strength, the muscles, all the things. You really need to check those boxes and be an advocate. If your doctor's not on board, get them on board or find a new one because this is important.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are inevitably getting a lot of questions about the fasting mimicking diet. So I'm going to go ahead and shift gears a little bit towards there. First, I'll introduce the fasting mimicking diet. Ashley, do you want to just share a little bit about the fasting mimicking diet and how it works specifically in the world of metabolic health right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So FMD, we sometimes refer to it as that, but the fasting mimicking diet is really just plant-based nutrition that allows your body to enter into the beneficial fasting state without triggering nutrient sensing pathways. So as the name says, it's a mimicking like a water fast. And by doing so, it's a prolonged fast. So the FMD is a tool essentially where you get nourishment, but you get the benefits of a prolonged fast where you see cellular benefits, healthy aging, disease modification, but doing so without some of the challenges like hunger and without some of the safety concerns like low blood pressure, low blood sugar, muscle loss, dehydration, things like that. So it makes it safe and doable to get those long lasting benefits that improve health span.
Fantastic. And maybe, I mean, while we're here, share a little bit about how L Nutra Health is taking advantage of that and turning that into a really simple process for people to take advantage of and ideally overcome some of their metabolic health concerns.
Yes. So L Nutra Health has two programs that, our research shows these cycles of FMD can help with so many different things, not even just metabolic health. I know we're kind of focused on that today, but with cancer and autoimmune and numerous other health conditions. But we do it in a structured way, which really helps people stay kind of on target. So we have two programs: our metabolic health program, essentially for anybody looking to lose weight, maybe they have prediabetes or other cardiometabolic risk factors, but you do 4 monthly cycles of fasting. We do labs in the beginning, so we get that insight we've been talking about, and then the cycles of FMD, and then labs at the end. And you have a coach that's there to be your cheerleader and help you through the hard times and help you work on your diet in between and all those lifestyle pillars of health we talked about with exercise. As Dr. Yates mentioned, the muscle preservation, which is huge, stress and sleep. And then our diabetes remission and regression program. This is follows these research protocols that help people really drive diabetes into remission. So you do 6 monthly cycles of fasting, and there's physician oversight to help you know what to do with your medicines during your fast and help you to be able to come off of those and to drive that diabetes down into remission and regression. So
What I love about also the metabolic program too is, as we were just talking about, it's not necessarily just for those with prediabetes. It's those who are curious to support their metabolic health, which, as we know, is the vast majority of the population today. And this
Mhm.
is where you can start getting that insight and start getting expert support on what these changes mean, what your labs mean. If you're wearing a CGM, support in analyzing that data, because it's one thing to have the information, it's another thing to understand and then make the right adjustments based off of that information. And that's really, I think, so much of the magic behind the L Nutra Health programs is the support and the
right.
guidance and the understanding and the expertise. So, Dr. Yates, please jump in and share a little bit about your experience and feelings towards the L Nutra Health programs and fasting mimicking diet in general.
Yeah, I've a fan of it as I've learned more about it these last several years and been introduced and gotten behind the scenes and come to really understand and appreciate the amount of science and evidence base behind this. It's a great way to go. It's safe, it's sane, everything's conveniently packaged. And I wonder, would you guys in the chat, would you let me know, are you somebody who likes to either Google around or go on social media and look for tips? when it comes to your health, especially for your blood sugar. I'm going to tell you right now, when you work with El Nutra, El Nutra's programs are put together with other people who are licensed, board certified experts to help you. So you aren't having to guess at it or poke and prod or hope that your favorite influencer actually knows what he or she is talking about. Being guided by health professionals really makes a difference. And it's a cheat code, it's a shortcut, a way to get to that healthier place and to know it with assurance. And if you run into a bump in the road, unlike what you'll see on social media, this person can actually help you with certainty because they've got the clinical background, both the academic training along with the lived experience of working with people just like you. So when you package together the expertise along with your motivation and the products, they can all come together. My own personal experience, along with my patients and clients with using the fasting mimicking diet, is that it's a powerful tool to help reset, to help activate, and to help restore health. And it's tangible. People tell me that they look younger, they feel younger, their clothes fit better. For those of us who maybe have in our genetic card deck issues around metabolic health, like say the diabetes heritage I have, being able to manage belly fat is a big deal. It's helpful. Whether you are thin or overweight, doesn't matter. Being able to make sure that that abdominal fat is healthy and not unhealthy, it speaks directly to it. Many of us are familiar with the BMI. Think about BMI and how much that's an unhelpful measure. The person who invented BMI said, don't use it for all of humanity. And so what are we doing, right? Not listening. So with that, the idea of height to weight measurements, measure your waist. And then if you do a cycle of the fasting mimicking diet, you can't argue with results, right? Muscle sparing, get a smart scale, get on your smart scale, and you'll know you've preserved your muscle when you went through a cycle of the fasting mimicking diet. It's not just a marketing thing, it's real, it's science.
Absolutely.
Dr. Yates, you say it so beautifully too. I mean, just you said that so effortlessly. I was just going to say, people, our members in our programs, they'll say like they came to us because of the science, they heard about it, but they stay because of the support and guidance and then outcomes. And so it's so key to have support.
Absolutely. So let's go into the chat here and answer a couple of the questions that are coming up from this discussion. I'm going to pass this one to Ashley around individuals who are over 70 years of age. How are we working with patients that are over even 65? Is that available through the El Nutra Health programs?
It is. I have lots of members in their 60s and 70s. And you know what? They keep doing FMD and they're getting younger and younger each cycle of FMD. But yes, having support is really important, and having the medical supervision is key, depending on maybe what medications they're on and just kind of looking at the overall clinical picture. But yes, don't let age stop you. So
Beautiful. And I think that that's always been something that in the world of Prolon, we've always cautioned against, because the research has been primarily done in those under the age of 65. But it's important to note that that was unsupervised fasting, right? In the world of Prolon, that is just here's your box and off to the races you go. It's designed for a generally healthy population, optimization, prevention. That is this Prolon. But when we go into the world of El Nutra Health, this is where a lot of the doors open because of the support and because of the guidance that is given by wonderful physicians and dietitians like Ashley and Dr. Yates joining us today. So it does, I think for anybody who has some of those concerns, it's funny because I've seen this question, even just in this chat, a handful of times. I think that is very reassuring. Okay, I also want to jump back to a question from Joseph, who asks about statins and whether or not you would recommend statins. Yes, no. That's generally what I think your question is asking, Joseph. So, Dr. Yates, do you want to take that away?
Oh, I love this question. Listen, friends, if we want healthy kinds of cholesterol, we need to do all we can to promote that in our body, right? And so there's a few things to know about statins. Statins are powerful drugs, and I do think they have a place for some people. I don't think they should be dispensed like candy, so let me be clear. In the case of statins, some things you need to know is that statins unfortunately deplete the body of one of the very things you need for cardiovascular health, specifically your heart, and that is coenzyme Q10. Now, coenzyme Q10, CoQ10 as it's commonly known, has about 6 or 7 enzyme steps to get to its most usable form that the body takes up, called ubiquinol. So I'm always hesitant about statins for that reason. I think that if you have Inflammation in the presence of cholesterol, this is where we're going to care. So, two things to know while we're here because this is educational. We want to look at the fractions of cholesterol. If you have lots of HDL, i.e., high density lipoprotein, over 50, great on your lab test. The more the better. Think of those as fluffy, buoyant umbrellas that keep things from sticking in your bloodstream. If you have too much LDL or too much VLDL or triglycerides, those are the ones that, in the presence of inflammation, are sticky and like to stick to the walls, the side walls, if you will, of your blood vessels, particularly like your arteries. That's where the fatty plaques can form, atheromas, things like that, that can cause the heart attacks and strokes. So you could be someone with a healthy cholesterol number in the overall aggregate number, yet still have a heart attack or a stroke. Why did that happen? Because you had just enough of the unfriendly cholesterol that was inflamed, that i.e. became sticky. In the presence of inflammation, cholesterol gets sticky. That's where all the trouble comes from. So cholesterol as an overall number, I've seen people panic who have HDL, the good kind of cholesterol that's like super high, like 110. And so therefore their total cholesterol number is like, say, 250. And otherwise their cholesterol is beautiful, no inflammation. You don't need to worry. So nuance is needed there. It's not, again, it's not a one size fits all answer. I know we all want that, but it's not. It doesn't work like that.
Well, we love that explanation. And even thank you, Layla, for jumping in and saying such a good explanation. It really is. And that's why we love having you here, Dr. Yates. You just truly, you always put a beautiful bow on every question. So thank you so much. Okay. So we've mentioned already a couple of times around lean muscle preservation and the importance of muscles. And with the rise of GLP-1s and their impact on muscle, let's just unpack that a little bit and feel free. Maybe Dr. Yates, I'll pass it back to you on your feelings towards muscle protection, the importance and the role of GLP-1s in today's world and how they are maybe in conflict here.
Yeah, it's an interesting time, and we're looking at this research. So, a few things I want everybody to keep in mind. GLP-1s are a new class of drugs. These things have not been around for the last 20, 30, 50 years, right? So, this is kind of living through a real time experiment in which we're all in participating for those people on those meds whose outcome is not 100% known. Having said that, I'm a fan of doing what works. I feel that GLP-1s buy people precious time. And for those who are plagued with severe amounts of food noise, this is a gift. Great. Meanwhile, I would love to see on the singing and dancing amazing commercials the same time, same tension and energy put to singing and dancing around strength training. I want people to know they got to build that muscle, even if you're on a GLP-1 drug. Then, if you were to discontinue it, your insurance doesn't pay for it, you can't afford it, whatever, because in the US, all this stuff is so expensive. You've built your muscles, you've built your metabolic engine, you've given yourself a chance to stay healthy if you discontinue that med for any reason. Otherwise, you're going to lose your muscle mass. Unlike the L-Nutra program and the fasting mimicking diet from Poland, where you're preserving your muscle mass, maybe even increase it a little bit, even if you aren't strength training, GLP-1s are going in the other direction. This is not good.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ashley, why don't you share a little bit about your perspective on this
Yes. I mean,
very common topic?
Yeah, absolutely. GLP-1s are not going anywhere right now. I mean, they're so big. And we have lots of people that come to us that are on them, whether they're using them to help with their diabetes control or for weight loss. Um, and we can help support them with that. Just because you're on one, you can still participate in the fasting mimicking diet. And, in our supervised programs, oftentimes the physicians will give some guidance on what to do with them during the fast. But as Dr. Yates said, muscle preservation is so important and something that's been shown to decrease. With FMD, there's weight loss, but there's weight loss of the visceral fat. And it's nice and slow and steady, and that preservation of muscle mass, which is your good, precious metabolic tissue, which helps prevent falls and keeps you strong, protects your bones. Um, and keeps your basal metabolic rate where it is. The people that are not actively working to keep their strength up, when they lose a significant amount of weight, both fat and muscle, and they don't make any changes with their diet or exercise, if they stop for whatever reason, whether it's cost or maybe they've been feeling kind of blah on the medicine with their GI upset or whatever it might be, or fatigue, they usually put that weight back on and then some if you're not actively engaging in healthy habits in between. So we're here to support you whether you're on it Or if you want to come off of it, we can also help you do that as well. So, um, but yes, they're not going anywhere anytime soon.
And, yeah, yeah, absolutely, and I love that you mentioned that it's also not something to be ashamed of either. I think there's,
Mhm.
this place now where there's just such controversy for these drugs, and there's now this feeling for people that really do need to be on them, or it's the right fit for them, that they shouldn't be or that they can't be. So, there's absolutely a place for that, and it's wonderful that also, not to mention in the L Nutra Health programs, for those individuals who are looking to gradually ramp off of them, there's also solutions for that too. So really, there's a lot of options. I also saw a really great question from David in the Q&A, who asks, why is the fasting mimicking diet muscle sparing? And I want to just start quickly answering that question, because it's one of my favorite components of the fasting mimicking diet. And there's a lot of things that kind of go into this, and there's a lot of things we still don't really know. But the things that we do know is that the fasting mimicking diet, because it puts your body into a fasted state, it actually triggers a growth hormone, which allows you to have a little bit of this muscle protection capabilities of that growth hormone. So there's that muscle protection capability, not to mention that you also are getting nutrients from the food that you're consuming during the fasting mimicking diet. So it's the combination of not just the fasted state, but also the nutrients given that play this beautiful storm to protect your muscle. And so it's the combination of the two that makes it so special in protecting muscle. So absolutely. And it's something that we've seen, by the way, in a large handful of our studies. We almost test that in every single study that we do, just because it is so important and so critical to our health that we ensure that we are, when losing weight, protecting that muscle. And we see it consistently in the literature. So great question. Thank you so much, David. Anything to add to that, Dr. Yates or Ashley?
I was just going to add, because that was very well said, Renee. I was just going to say, in the FMD, David, there's an L drink. I don't know if you've done Prolon before, the fasting mimicking diet, but there's a drink on days 2 through 5 that is dosed based on your weight. And that's essentially what it's there for. Glycerol, we encourage you to sip on it slowly, but it helps kind of send little signals to the brain not to drop that muscle mass, because we want to help protect your lean mass and keep you in that fasted state. So that allows us to help you do that.
I have a very interesting question by Layla. I'm going to pass this one to Dr. Yates because we haven't studied this yet. So this is going to be an assumption that I think that we're going to have to make here. But with the metabolic recovery provided by the fasting mimicking diet, would it be possible that we naturally bolster our production of GLP-1s that are just innate in our body?
That's a great question. If I think about the things that GLP-1s are good at, in terms of suppressing food noise, helping people feel more in control of their food choices, enjoying satiety, that is satisfaction from what they eat, whether or not that's helping the hormones of, say, ghrelin or more importantly, leptin around satiety, what I've observed is that people find that their cravings reduce, that their sense of, hey, I can tell that I've had enough to eat, which some people really struggle with, and the GLP-1 class of drugs are amazing for those who cannot tell when it's time to stop eating. What I found and my clients and patients have found is exactly that, Renee, which is they're much more in control. So cravings are down, satisfaction from food is up, provided what they're eating is nutrient dense and healthy, is what Ashley had talked about earlier. These are important things. And what I've noticed is that people don't go backwards, they stay in that healthier place and then they can build on it. So with repeated cycles, things typically will get better and better. And the people who are being served stay in charge. It's not like something magical is happening to them or outside of them. They're absolutely at the center here in the healing zone. And so I think I wouldn't be surprised at all if detailed research pointed to that exact same effect. I think it is supporting those pathways. That could be why microdosing GLP-1 sometimes is enough for some people. They don't need a full amount, for instance.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I was just brought back to one of our past webinars with Dr. Michael Chapman, where behind him he had the map of all of the biochemical pathways interweaving within one another and the complexity there. And I mean, there are so many ways that a change that we make in one place can impact a downstream effect of so many things. And what is so incredible about the fasting mimicking diet in particular is that we are working at a deep cellular level in many respects. And especially when we get to day 3 of our fast and we trigger autophagy, AKA that deep cellular cleanup. I like to consider it that vacuum cleaner for our cells, for those of you who are less familiar with the concept of autophagy. But that deep cellular cleanup and the ability to work at the cellular level allows us to work essentially at the root cause and are able to impact so many of these systems and kind of get a lot of these downstream effects. So while we might not know the answer to that question, Layla, in certainty, it's a really interesting thought experiment, and I think something that we should eventually test into with especially the rise and popularity of GLP-1s. So it's likely coming. All right, so let's go into some more of these questions here. So Laura is asking, and Ashley, I'm going to send this one to you.
Okay.
Laura has the Stello continuous glucose monitoring, and she uses the app to have her blood glucose data. Would that be enough data to help you as a dietitian with the L Nutra Health program give her guidance? What else would you need? Or tell us a little bit about how you would work with Laura in this context.
Yes. So Stello being a Dexcom product, we can access that together, send you kind of an invite to our link, so to speak, for our, the RDs at All Nutra Health, and look at that together. You know, a lot of the CGMs have little areas where you can document foods that you eat, or you could even, I've had some members that I work with that they see spikes with stressful moments, and sometimes they might notate that so that we can say like, oh, look at this, what was happening at this time, or look for trends. So you can do that with any of the CGMs, like to use that as tangible data to help figure out what's going on and how we can improve those. So yes, absolutely.
Beautiful. And I love Dr. Yates in the chat. Autophagy is a gift for human health.
I
Absolutely.
saw that too,
And
Dr.
Dr.
Yates, which is true. It's an underutilized tool, which is so great that the fasting itself is an underutilized tool to help improve health. So
Yeah,
it's
I've always
beautiful.
think of it as like spring cleaning, a way to just reset, redo, and remind, particularly as we age. To
Mhm.
me, the goals, some of the goals many of us have will be around longevity, reducing independence on prescription medication, and to be independent. So many
Mm.
people are afraid of living a long time because they're just worried that they're going to become weak, enfeebled, and helpless. It doesn't have to be like that, but you need to have a game plan in today's world if you're going to have this go well. I don't know that we can assume it's going to happen by accident. I don't think that's true anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, really great question by Janice, who asks. She did a Prolon fast, she has an electric impedance scale at her club, and she saw that she had lost 2 pounds of lean mass. However, 2 weeks later, she tested again, and the lean mass had returned, and she didn't know what to think about that. So I almost want to answer this, but I'm gonna give it to you, Ashley, and I might tack on a couple things when you're done. And
Sure.
Dr.
No,
Yates.
absolutely. You know, we tell our members to look at their scales, and we want to look at all of the things. We want to look at skeletal muscle. We want to look at visceral fat. And sometimes during that 5-day fast, there is a little temporary decrease, but just as you saw, it bounces back up. And some of that is a combination of things. You know, glucose is moving out of those muscle cells. Sometimes water follows. So there's some just kind of shifts during the time of the fast, but within a week or 2 weeks later, you should see that that's back up. And over the course of time, it's maintained, if not maybe increases some throughout the cycle. So I'm so glad that you are able to experience that for yourself too. So, because that
Absolutely.
shows, you know, it's aligned with our research.
Yeah, and I have to note, we love those BIAs, or sorry, my trend towards acronyms is getting to me. Bioimpedance analysis, those are your in-bodies. Those are all of those measures that allow you to get a sense of body composition, but they do it through this electrical analysis. And the amount of water in your body has a really big impact on what it's going to give you as an answer. And when we go through a fast, as Ashley mentioned, our water levels change very drastically. And so if you measure immediately after finishing your fast, you are very likely going to have a distorted view of what your body composition is. And it might actually even show that you had muscle loss because of the change in body water and not because of a true muscle loss. Muscle is very hard to gain back. So it is very unlikely that you lost it and gained it back in 2 weeks, unless you're doing some incredible training and you need to give us all your workout routine. But it is very likely actually a measurement error. And so when we do all of our testing, we always test. And I would do this also for your lab metrics, because there's a lot of things that are changing when we go through these 5-day fasts. Give yourself at least 3 days, but even ideally 5 to 7 days before doing those bioimpedance analysis tests, before getting your labs drawn. Let your body kind of recalibrate, and you will see that's where all of those beautiful metrics come back into play. So resist the urge. It's so tempting. You think it's going to be the best number right when you're done on day 6, but you actually need to give your body a little bit of time to recalibrate. So, all right. Okay. So let's go back into the questions. So, this is a great question. And it is a question by Jacqueline. She said, this may be outdated thinking, but how is eating like fasting? I'll give it to you, Ashley.
How is eating like fasting?
So how is the fasting mimicking diet where you eat food? How is that fasting?
Oh, how is that fasting? Okay, got it. Now I understand the question. Well, we give you, so the fasting mimicking diet is a very specific macronutrient ratio that it gives you just enough nutrition that you're kind of flying under the radar, where we're not triggering these nutrient sensing pathways like the IGF-1 and PK and mTOR. So you get nourishment, but your body doesn't realize you're fasting. And but it's a very specific ratio. And so I know sometimes people try to create their own and do that themselves, but to be guaranteed results, the FMD makes it so easy, knowing that you're going to be able to get into autophagy, but doing so in a way that's easy and safe. So and
Absolutely.
nourished
And sustainable. You're not going to break
and
anything in the
sustainable.
process. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
So let's shift gears a little bit. We've been talking a lot about the fasting mimicking diet, and let's take a step back a little bit and look at everyday nutrition. I'd love to pass this one to you, Dr. Yates, on how you recommend nutrition outside of fasting windows. What are your key recommendations to daily nutrition?
Okay, great. Happy to dive in here. It's something I've incorporated in the book, right? The Yates protocol. So in there, nutrition I recommend, and Ashley, I'd love to get your feedback on this, is about foods that are nutrient dense. No food groups are excluded. No food groups are demonized. My program and the way I've worked with things and what I found has worked has been sustainable and not extreme things. So it's like, not mad at meat, not mad at carbs, not mad at fat, because some of these nutritional plans, I'm like, well, what are they supposed to eat? This is the first question people ask. What am I supposed to eat, right? So the focus here is like half of your plate is absolutely plant-based. Ideally leafy greens because they feed your gut's microbiome. They help with you feeling full and satisfied. They speak to that satiety, that hormone leptin, that's important. Additionally, it help with bowel movements, right? Because people sometimes struggle with other programs. They wind up constipated and miserable. Nobody wants that. So that's cool. Another quarter of the plate is going to be protein because protein has its own gifts to share with us around satiety and satisfaction. And then another quarter is going to be focused on those complex carbs and resistant starch. Healthy fats can be found amongst the plant-based side with nuts and seeds or with your proteins and also with some of your resistant starch items. So depending on how you eat, like for instance, if you have a Mediterranean diet, this is easy. Many cuisines around the world actually from their original cuisine, not how they might get reinterpreted here, but how they actually are actually quite healthy. It's when you add in the unhealthy things, that's where the trouble comes, or these bizarre additives. If you read the labels of some of these products, you're like, where's the food? You know, it's all chemicals.
Yeah. I mean, the food system today and the food world today is a scary scary place, but also one that we can navigate, absolutely, and we can enjoy. And there's a world where we can bring it all together. And I love the concept of what can I have as opposed to what can I not have. And generally, if we think in this lens of what we can have, it ends up just naturally pushing out some of the things that might not do us as justice. So, Ashley, did you want to add anything to that?
I'm just going to echo that balance. It's so important to have, that 50% or more of your plant-based foods, those, high micronutrient foods. Typically, if you're eating those, you're getting a lot of volume, and that helps keep you full. It helps with your bowel motility, but that balance with, like you said, those calorie dense foods, um, high, fiber, complex grains, quinoa, brown rice, just lots of good options there. Barley, and then with your protein too, whether it's fish or maybe it's from soy, maybe it's from tofu, whatever it is, but a nice balanced plate. And that also helps with your metabolic health too. So
Absolutely. We did get an interesting question. I want to go hunt it down. It was a little bit earlier. Here it is by Chetna. And it is very specific to a specific ingredient. And it was Ezekiel bread. And she was wondering if it would cause difficulty in losing weight, even though it is considered healthy, she felt that it caused insulin resistance for her. So when maybe this we can take us a little bit of a step back and kind of generalize this question, but in looking at bread and kind of a lot of people thinking of bread, especially as either really healthy or not healthy, kind of where does this fall in this balanced diet that you are both sharing? Dr. Yates, do you want to take a stab at it?
Yeah, Ezekiel bread, typically is thought of as a sprouted bread made from sprouted grains. And as such, I think it's for me falls under that umbrella of test, don't guess. So you can try it out, use your CGM, some objective measure along with notice how you feel. Do you feel satiated? Do you feel hangry? Which is a combination, an unfortunate combination of angry and hungry, etc. And is it serving you? Is it helping you with your goals or is it interfering? I think people have such a wide variety of reactions to anything with grains that we really have to be careful about trying to paint a brush and say the information applies to everyone evenly. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, and could not agree more. And Maribel in the chat, I see go, love Dr. Yates. I think we all agree. So much love for Dr. Yates. It's contagious. I kid you not. We're so happy to have you here. Okay, so you answered this one in the chat in the Q&A directly, but I think it's a good one to pull out to the audience. We were talking about CGM's continuous glucose monitors earlier, and Jacqueline asks if there is a substitution for CGMs. Is there anything else that could really give us this information? She did state lumen, which isn't quite the direct substitution, but is there any substitution? Dr. Yates, any thoughts?
Not that I know of at this time. There are some companies that are working that are startups that have a patch you can put on your arm or somewhere else on your body that doesn't require the insertion of the needles, the filament that's here on a CGM. But I don't know that anybody's really out the gate yet and has the blessing as a medical device or maybe a different category from the FDA. So I'd say stay tuned. There absolutely are companies working on this, and they're not all in Silicon Valley. I just had to reach out this morning from one that I want to say is based in London. I'm not sure, but I haven't connected with them. So I know people are working on this for sure. They are.
Yeah,
And Renee,
absolutely.
I was just going to add to that, again, I don't know of another substitution, but I do have plenty of people that, maybe they can't get one, but maybe the cost is keeping them from getting one, but you can still use a glucose monitor to get some insight. And you can do that with things like paired checks. And I know it's more finger pricks, but there are still some things you can do to at least kind of see how certain foods are impacting your health. And I know Dr. Yates or a dietitian, diabetes educator like myself could help you with that too. So,
Right, and just to so that everybody is looped in on this, would you share just a little bit of the difference between the continuous glucose monitor and what you're recommending?
yeah, so the glucose monitor is just like a finger prick. You've probably had one at your physician office before, and it's checking your blood sugar in your bloodstream. So it gives you a picture of exactly what's going on there, where the CGM is in your interstitial fluid. And so sometimes there can be a little lag time there. And Dr. Gates, I'm gonna have you chime in too, but you get a nice picture of the trends, and it's just so convenient and easy and less painful to have the CGM in. But that blood glucose monitor lets you know exactly what it is at the moment. Actually, if I have people that have issues and maybe get a low, maybe a false low with the CGM, I always want you to check with the glucose monitor too to get that accurate number. So, Dr. Yates, anything to add there?
Yeah, that was great, Ashley. Thank you for your words. It could just really, clear information. And someone had asked about that before. I think it was Raj on the panelist question asked about the interstitial space. So with that in mind, CGMs give you about 10 to 15 minutes time lag. So technically speaking, when I said earlier real-time data, I should say real-time plus 10, or actually minus 10 to 15 minutes, but it's close enough for most people. And if you get a low, absolutely use an actual drop of blood onto the test strip, into the glucometer to calibrate. Sometimes people are told to calibrate their CGM with the blood drop test strips glucometer when they get a new CGM, just to be sure that all the readings are accurate. And I'm sure over time some of this will shift and improve, because the good news is that people continue to push the boundaries of what's working and not working here in this world, which is good. They haven't sat on their laurels about this.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and for those who are a little less familiar with what the interstitial space is, do you want to just share a little bit about what the difference between what you might get from that reading versus directly in the blood from the fingerprint, what that would be, Dr. Yates?
Absolutely. And also, Veronica posts something here. I want to remind people or just share with you if this is new to you. If you have a CGM, it's important not to lay on top of it. So if you're a side sleeper and you roll over into your arm, I always have my patients place it, then go get on their bed and be in the physical position they would normally be. And if they are a side sleeper, practice being able to place it somewhere they're not going to roll over on top of it. Once you roll over on top of it, almost always screams. And yes, it's going to produce a low and wake you up. And all kinds of drama will unfurl because of that. Once that filament gets bent, it's not really happy, and sometimes it might even stop working. So don't roll over on them. So you're absolutely right. I think, was it Veronica? Someone in the chat posted that.
Yeah,
Absolutely. That's important.
fantastic. All right. So I think this is a really cool question. Actually, let's go back to the nutrition. Katerina had asked, there's a lot of controversy about dairy. What is your take on dairy? Ashley, if you want to take that one.
Yes. So, I mean, my personal intake on dairy is I eat some dairy. With the longevity diet, we encourage you to, have more plant-based foods in general. And actually, after age 65, even a little bit more protein, including things like goat cheese and feta, are good sources for you of dairy. But I think, it can be used in a well-balanced diet to give you a little extra protein when needed. And it can give you some fullness too. So, Dr. Yates.
Yeah, so I diverge here. When it comes to dairy, butter and ghee are okay. Ghee is clarified butter and is simply the butter fat. It doesn't have any of the proteins left. Butter doesn't have much in the way at all of milk proteins. My point of view about dairy products and cheese and all, and I understand that for some people this is probably a critical part of their nutrition, but for some people I also know this is part of what's making them unwell. Whether they're constantly hawking up mucus and coughing, gagging, whether they have a runny nose and they're doing what I call the salute, like this all the time, that's their gut might be telling them, hey, I can't really digest these dairy products appropriately. About 15% of humanity after the age of 4 or 5 can readily digest these proteins that come from, say, cow's milk, sheep's milk, or goat's milk. The rest of us, it's actually no good. It's no bueno. So with that in mind, think about how you do. If you struggle with like gas and bloating and things, it could be dairy. Maybe not. It could be something else. That's in the category of test, don't guess, because, for some of us, this is a very healthful food. And for others of us, like for me personally, it's a disaster. So you have to know who you are. I found that one out quite by accident. I think I was between freshman and sophomore year, actually, at MIT. There was an article in Boston Globe saying the symptoms of a dairy intolerance, now not allergy, an intolerance. And sure enough, it was like green check marks for me the whole way. It's been life changing to figure that out. I no longer wake up with a sinus headache. So it depends on who you are.
Yeah,
And for anybody
personalization is
that doesn't know, I was going to say the FMD is dairy free too, just so dairy free, gluten free. So if that's a concern,
Yeah.
you will be fine with the fasting mimicking diet.
I appreciate the quality of food that's in the fasting mimicking diet and the structure of the L Nutra program because you're meeting people where they are. You've eliminated or greatly reduced common food obstacles, if you will, things that people have reactivity to, so they can really focus in on what's going to be healthful for them and their blood sugar in that journey. I think it's really superbly put together to help people get a result without having to live their life as if they have no other responsibilities. So it's really good.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, one last question before we close it out, guys. An anonymous attendee asked, cortisol plays a huge role in blood sugar. Are there monitors for cortisol fluctuations? Dr. Yates.
I do not know in today's world if there's monitors for cortisol fluctuations. There's absolutely lab tests. There's blood-based assessments for cortisol as well as salivary assessments of cortisol. The salivary ones are looking at your tissue uptake, which is a little different than a blood assessment, but I don't know of any gizmos that necessarily do it.
Yeah, I think, I mean, it's all in due time, right? Especially with stress being such a big player in our longevity and our health. And Dr. Yates, you had shared that at the very beginning of this talk, stress being one of your 5 pillars. And it certainly is also a pillar in the longevity diet. So we're all in agreement there. And cortisol is one of many metrics of stress in our body. And so that's definitely coming. I'm sure it's around the corner, if it's not already here. So, I want to let you both say any final words of wisdom. You have both been such incredible guests here today. I know the audience has been so grateful. Again, we are going to give one little treat at the end of the session, so please all stay for that. But Ashley, if you'd like to say any closing words, and then I'll give it to Dr. Yates.
Yeah, I just want to thank you all for attending. And if you are looking for some structure with doing the fasting mimicking diet, whether it's in metabolic program and you're looking to just lose weight, or maybe just learn some healthier habits and have support, maybe you have prediabetes, we're here to help you. I've got a team of fantastic dietitians that would be here to help support you and give you guidance through that. So thank you all for your time tonight.
Absolutely. Dr. Yates, any final words?
Yeah, friends, for all of you who were able to be a part of this webinar and for your questions, participation, we thank you sincerely. Al Nutra has a wonderful program with experienced folks who are able to help you, who are qualified to help you, and also can help you untangle some knots you may have, things that might be items of mystery. You're trying to figure out, like, man, the CGM or my glucometer keeps telling me that my blood sugar is in a good range, but yet my A1C keeps going up. When you have those kind of disparities, it's appropriate. In fact, it's necessary to get professional assistance so you aren't left wandering for years, wondering what's going on. Think about it like this: as we move forward with time, the damage from unhealed issues with blood sugar is relentless. It goes on whether you're paying attention to it or not. So please don't, miss the opportunity to be well.
Thank you so much, Dr. Yates. And thank you, Ashley. This has been such an incredible webinar. I see it all in the chat, all of the thank yous coming your way. So we appreciate your time, and for everybody joining us